Hey guys, it's Maddie, and today I'll be reviewing If There's No Tomorrow by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is a book I'm very excited to review. If you are new to this channel, then you might not know this, but I talk about this one book a lot, and it's called The Problem with Forever by the same author. And I've claimed that it's my favorite book of all time, which it most definitely is. I love it so much, so I was expecting great things from this book. And I was not disappointed, and I am so excited to talk about it. So let's just get into a very vague summary. So this book is about a girl named Lena. The beginning of this book takes place in the summer before her senior year of high school, so she's almost about to graduate. She's already thinking about college. She's also in love with her best friend named Sebastian, and she's been in love with him for pretty much the entire time they've known each other, but he's only thought of her as a friend, and they've just grown up as best friends. And she's been dying to tell him how she really feels. So Lena is very excited for things that are about to happen to her in the future, but something happens that changes everything. That is a spoiler, so I'm not going to say what it is. And that's basically what the gist of this book is about. Now I'm going into my thoughts about it. The first part of this video will be spoiler free, but I'll go into more of my spoilery discussions on what exactly did happen in this book that changed Lena's life, but we'll keep it spoiler-free for now for those of you who haven't read it. So, going into the plot, I think the plot was so well done. The plot of this book handles themes of grief and despair, and I think the plot maneuvered itself in a way that really brought those themes to light and made them seem so realistic. The thing I really love about this book is how real it is. Everything that Lena experiences throughout this book was just so realistic to me. Throughout this book, I could feel myself being placed in her shoes. Like, I've been in these situations before. Not the exact same situation as her, but I could understand her feelings of her feeling guilty about this thing that she's done. Because I have been in situations where I'm like, I could have done this one thing differently, and things could have turned out so much better. My life could have been so much better, but I didn't. So I understood her feelings of just that guilt she has, or that feeling she has where, yeah, she could have done this one thing. She made this one mistake that changed everything, that changed her life for the worse. I could completely get where she was coming at with that. One interesting thing about this plot is that it starts off with what happened yesterday, and then it goes into what happened today, which is the now, and what happens tomorrow. So it kind of takes place in different points in times across like 3 days, which I think was really interesting. Going into the characters, I really like Lena. I already kind of talked about her in the plot. I kind of just got off track during the plot there, but yeah, I really liked her. As I said, I really related to her. She's gone through something that is so tragic, and she was so relatable in that way. And the way she dealt with it, how she felt about it, I could totally see myself through her. And what I liked is that before this thing happens, we see her so happy. She's so excited for her future and what's to come. And then after this thing happens, you see her deteriorate into depression. And I thought that gradual going into that depression after what has happened was so realistic. You can really see her character development go from so hopeful, so excited for her future, into someone who doesn't know if she's going to have a future, doesn't feel like she can be happy because of what has happened. So I really liked seeing her progress to the point of being so happy to going into this depression, because I felt like it was really real and relatable. I also liked her love interest, Sebastian. He was so cute. He's very quirky and he's very easy to love, and I could see why Lena loves him so much. He really is such a great friend to her. And that leads me into the romance. So I'm not going to talk a whole lot about the romance, just because talking about the romance also goes into what the spoilery thing is, but I will say it is very cute. I liked seeing it progress. I liked seeing how it changed after this one thing happened that changes Lena's life and how she's dealing with it. And this book has the in love with your best friend trope, which can get kind of cheesy at times, but I thought it was dealt in such a cute way in this book, and I absolutely loved it. Jennifer L. Armentrout is one of my favorite writers ever. She's like my favorite author now because I love The Problem with Forever. I love this book. Her writing style just works for me. She writes in a way that's simple easy to read, but still includes a lot of detail. I just feel like it's just my ideal writing style. Like, her writing style just clicks to me. We click together. I just like it. So, I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. I loved it so much. I will say this is one of those books, as cheesy and cliche as it sounds, it really did change my life. It made me see things in just a different light. It made me understand how it is to really grieve, how hard it can be to move on from something so tragic, but how you have to move on, otherwise you'll be stuck your entire life feeling unhappy, and it's just not a way to live. So I like the messages that were brought out in this book. I love the themes. I feel like this is definitely a book you need to go into not knowing much about it, and I will leave it at that. So all I want to say is that read this book. It was amazing. Now I'm going to go into spoilers. I'm really excited to discuss this book because this review was so hard to do without spoiling it, so it's nice to actually be able to talk about it. So gonna go into spoilers now, so if you have not read the book, then please leave so that I do not spoil you. Alright, so obviously I want to talk about what happened. So the big thing that happened that changed Lena's life was her friends die in a car crash, which after I read that page when she was in the hospital and her mom tells her, like, your friends did not make it in the car crash, you're the only survivor, I was like, what? Am I reading that right? Did that just happen? Because we went through all these chapters getting to know all of these characters. Like, we knew Lena, but what I appreciate about this book is that we really get to know each and every one of the characters, even like the minor side characters. So we got to know all about Megan and Cody and Philip and Chris. Well, we kind of... Okay, Chris is the one character we didn't really get to know a lot about. All I knew was that he was Megan's cousin. But Philip and Cody and Megan we got to know so much about. So to find out that they are dead within like the next chapter, I was like in shock. I'm like, are you kidding me? I was so sad. Especially Megan. She was like that spunky best friend that I really love. I was so sad that she died. Like, it was awful. And then Lena's situation in it, because she was the one person who was not drunk that night, and she knew that Cody was drunk and shouldn't have been driving, and she tried to say something. She tried to be like, oh, maybe you shouldn't drive, like I could drive, and he was like, no, I'm fine, which kills me, because when someone is drunk, they can think that they're fine, and they are not. And Cody was definitely in that situation. And Lena didn't say anything. She was just like, let it go, because she didn't want to be that person who was like worried about the littlest things. She didn't want to come off as that person. So she gets in the car. She's the only one wearing her seatbelt. Car crash happens. Everyone dies. She's the only one surviving. And what the main thing about this story is that it's dealing with survivor's guilt, which is such a hard thing to read about. Reading about a character who is feeling so guilty because they could have prevented this. The most heartbreaking thing is that this could have been prevented so easily. And to watch Lena go through the emotions of guilt because she could have prevented this was so heartbreaking to read about. It really got me emotional to the point where I was like, I feel like I can't read this book because it's so emotional, because she could have prevented this from happening, but she didn't. And I think because of that, this book really took the theme of one mistake could change everything so well. I just felt like Lena's emotions were so realistic and how she dealt with that grief. One thing I remember in this book that was a really good point is Abby, which is Lena's other best friend, drove to this party with Chris, who was already drunk before they had gotten to the party, and he was driving. And Abby throughout this book is like ridiculing Lena because Abby knew that Lena was not drunk, and she kept telling Lena, you should have been driving, like why did you let Cody drive? You know how big of a mistake that was? But then Lena tells Abby that she drove to the party with Chris when he was drunk, and she could have gotten into a car crash just like her. It could have been the same situation, but she just got lucky. And in that way, I felt like Abby was being so hypocritical. I'm like, yeah, you could have driven because Chris was drunk. Like, why are you telling Lena this when you're being a hypocrite about it. And I really like that theme it brought up, that some people just get lucky. I mean, I have ridden with people who have been drinking, and I've been at times like, oh, this might be a bad situation, and everything turns out okay. But it could have gotten to that point where there could have been a car accident. And I do believe that some people do get lucky, and I like how it brought that out, because I would have never thought about that before. But yes, Abby did get lucky, and she kept ridiculing Lena for not speaking up and not driving the car. But it's like, you could have been in the same situation, but you weren't. You just got lucky. So I like how it brought that up. Another thing I liked that was brought up in this book is, I like the part when Lena was online looking at the news article about the car crash, and there were all these comments under it saying like, these were stupid teens who were drinking, like how could they be so stupid? People are like saying like they're an example for why you shouldn't drink and drive. And then Lena was so upset afterward, and she was thinking like, is this all my friends are going to be remembered for? Are they just going to be remembered for the stupid mistake they made of drinking and driving or getting into the car with a drunk driver? Is that all they're going to be remembered for? Because these kids had done such great things. Like Cody was the quarterback of the football team. Megan was a super successful volleyball player. Philip did something, but I can't remember what it was. And Lena was just like, is this all they're going to be remembered for? And that put her so down. And that really made me think, because on the news we see people get into these situations where they are driving drunk and they get in a car accident and die, and sometimes all we think about is them and the mistake they made, and we don't think about who they were as a person before they were in this crash, the successful things they've done in their life, how their life was. And that part got me so emotional. Like right now I'm just like, wow, that was such an eye-opener for me. That's why I'm saying how much this book changed my life. It made me see things in such a different light that have to do with death and how we remember someone after their death that I had never thought about before. So I really loved that point that was brought up. Like, do we really remember someone for the great things they did after they died? Like, wow. Just blew my mind. You could really see after this accident happened how it affected not only Lena's life, because she had stopped putting school as a priority, and then she had even stopped doing volleyball and all that, which was heartbreaking because she felt like she couldn't be happy after living with survivor's guilt, which I thought was pretty realistic. What I also enjoyed seeing, well, not enjoyed, it was kind of heartbreaking, but I liked how realistic it was, is that she felt like she couldn't maintain her relationships with her friends because she kept pushing her friends away. And it was kind of frustrating because I'm like, these are your friends, they're trying to help you. But at the same time, I could understand where Lena was coming from, because she was in just such this deep depression where she felt like she couldn't be around anyone. She kept pushing people out. And it was kind of heartbreaking because her friends really wanted to help her get through this. Like, they loved her, but she kept pushing them away. So you could really see how after this happened where all her friends died, how this really affected her relationships. One thing I also loved seeing is how it affected her feelings now towards Sebastian, because before she had been completely in love with him, and now after this, like, her feelings sort of changed because Sebastian isn't her main priority anymore, because she's so focused in her grief and on her friends. And one thing that was so frustrating is that after all this happens, Sebastian confesses how much he loves her. And I'm like, dude, you had to do it now after her friends have died and she really doesn't want to prioritize you anymore. And when he says that, Lena is like, gets so mad for the same reasons I just said. Like, she's like, you had to do this now, right after her friends died, when I'm not in a good place right now. So that was something that was also heartbreaking to see, because at the beginning of this book, I was like, oh, they'd be so cute together. But after this, Lena is not the same person anymore. Her feelings have kind of changed for Sebastian. Well, they haven't, like, changed. They're still there, but she's in such a bad mental state right now where she can't put all her focus into him anymore. And one thing, which is the main theme of the story with Lena, is that she feels like she can't move on and be happy. So she feels like she can't be in a relationship. She feels like she doesn't deserve to be with Sebastian and be happy because of what she's done, because her friends are dead and they will never live again and be happy, so why should she? And it appeared that Sebastian had moved on way quicker than Lena did, which is understandable because he wasn't in Lena's position. Lena actually was in the car crash. She was the one who could have stopped it. So she's dealing with all these guilt where she just can't move on right away. And what I liked is that these two characters dealt with this conflict so well. Like, Sebastian gave her time to herself, time for her to reevaluate herself, time for her to grieve and mourn and move on, and then they could work on their relationship. I really enjoyed seeing that because I think that's such a good example of how a relationship should be dealt in this situation. Like, if one person can't move on, they're not in the mental state for a relationship, that other person should give them that time to themselves before they actually get together and start dating, for them to have time to move on and to be in a good mental state again, because Lena definitely was not in a great mental state throughout this entire book until the end. And I really love the ending scene when she's at the cemetery, because that just solidified that she had finally moved on and she was ready to get some closure. I just love seeing that. You just really just love this book because you get to see Lena's growth throughout it all, of how she went into shock, into grief, into moving on and getting that closure. I just loved seeing that so much. So yeah, I just love this book. I love it so much where I can't tell you whether I like The Problem with Forever or If There's No Tomorrow more. Like, they're on par of the same level with me. They are just amazing. Like, I am just astounded by Jennifer's writing abilities and the way she tells stories, and I just love the themes that are in her books, at least her contemporary ones. Have not read the Lux series yet or any of her new adult series, so I'm not sure how those one goes, but for her YA contemporaries, they are amazing, and I just love these two books so much. Cannot recommend them enough. They are amazing. So I'm going to stop there with my rambly fangirling about this book. I loved it so much. Please let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below, whether you loved it or hated it. I would love to know. And if you guys liked this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe down below for more bookish related videos and book reviews.